What's better than a devil you don't know? A devil you do.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the channel. I hope you're all staying safe out there. This past week, we got another gameplay demo from Larian through the IGN Summer of Gaming livestream, and I wanted to help show it off to you guys. But first things first, just look at the Flaming Fist tapestry that's sitting behind Sven. It looks absolutely amazing, and I think I'm kind of bummed there's anything like that online. I would love to have one of those just hang on the wall behind me over here. But enough of that. Today, I've categorized everything into a few different sections for you that will be put into timestamps in the description below, and we will go over some general stuff, some specific stuff, my thoughts on them, a small amount of vocab explained that some of us may not have recognized at first, the spells and their animations, some environment and lighting, and lastly, some UI stuff. Now, starting off with the minor stuff. We learned that the dialogue options have been updated. They moved away from third-person dialogue options to first-person. Some minor bugs are seen here and there during the demo, but they're pretty unnoticeable until Sven actually points them out. Mocap is addressed, saying that character movements and such still need polishing at the moment. A select all function for grabbing all party members is in the works. Of course, playing with the environment is meant to be rewarding, and that exploration itself will be continually rewarded. It is possible to hurt yourself when messing with the environment, and certain things within the environment, like spider eggs and whatnot, they'll hatch if you're not careful. Larian wants dynamic and interactable environments to have a big impact on the gameplay. That verticality and lighting is an important aspect of the environment as well to them. The initiative system was modified since the last time we saw it. It's gone back to a traditional initiative system, but now if two party members are next to each other in the lineup, you can choose which sequence you want those two people to interact with the fight. It is also reconfirmed again that we can choose our character's reactionary abilities that can be facilitated automatically in combat, such as attacks of opportunity or possibly even counter spells. Now, outside of the game as well, offhand remarks during the demo and the two interviews that Sven did, some things we learned is that Larian currently has over 250 people working in-house on BG3 right now, and that's not counting the outsourcing. Versus during their days making DOS 2, they had roughly 100 to 120 people working on that game. One interesting thing we also learned is that when Larian was first writing BG3, that is also when Witches of the Coast was creating Descent into Avernus, and Sven was able to get a very early copy of the module before it was released to the public. Plus, also something really neat is that one of the writers for Descent into Avernus, Adam Lee, he ended up coming over to their studio in Belgium so that he and Sven could have synergy between the two stories and tie things together as well. So I suspect we'll be seeing a lot of those tie-togethers during the actual game itself. Hopefully we'll see it sooner than later once alpha hits. And then also one thing that Sven mentioned that I was pretty happy about is that he just very briefly said that him and his team, they admit that they learned a lot from BG2, the original games. And I think for those of us who are really in love with the old games, I think that's kind of nice to hear, because it's just further reiteration that they really care and they really want to, make it fun for everyone. Sven is wanting there to be tangible consequences to our actions as well, more than what's been done before. He also wants the game to become more accessible to non-D&D players. He wants the game to be very intuitive so that anyone can just jump in and just enjoy the game. As far as classes go, the plan is to implement every class currently in 5th edition and to try implementing a good portion of the subclasses as well. The classes are going to be very important to gameplay. You won't be able to become a jack of all trades like you may have been able to do in DOS. Also, all of your choices down to race and class will have a much bigger impact than it ever did in their previous games. There will also be the possibility to reward you for doing incredibly evil things, as well as things becoming very difficult for you if you choose to do good things. We will be faced with choices where we have to consider what are we willing to sacrifice to save others, as well as what are we willing to sacrifice for our own sake. Sven wants there to be a fundamental discussion between you and yourself, and then a fundamental discussion between you and your party members over these choices. And a few final tidbits for the general stuff. The game UI got some slight updates since we last saw it. It's going to continuously be improved over time. Our mage companion Gale might have first-hand experience with hell and devils. It was a very brief conversation we saw during the demo that lent this idea. We ended up seeing a lot of goblins throughout the demo, and of course the route to the Underdark was chosen by chat instead of the hobgoblin route. Before I move on to some specifics, just remember that Sven and his team, they heavily favor community feedback. So wherever you are online, just keep bringing up your ideas, your feedback, because they love that and they're listening. Now for some specific stuff. The inspiration system has been implemented through the persuasion checks we get with our dialogue options. If we fail a dice check during a persuasion attempt, we may have the option to re-roll that attempt. But originally the system works by the DM handing out inspiration points based on you doing incredible things. Since there is no actual DM in BG3, Sven is wanting these inspiration points to feel rewarding whenever we happen to get them, something that's rare to get a hold of. He did mention that it's possible to go through the game without ever getting one. So just be on the lookout for one of those things. Dialogue options are of course influenced by our stats, and we are even given the option of using the tadpole's powers in certain dialogue options. When I first saw this, I immediately thought to myself, is using the tadpole a good idea? How will it affect us in the long run? Will there be an invisible counter for every time we use it? Just as I'm wondering about this, Sven immediately ends up telling us that every time we choose this option, we feel as if something is being taken away from us. Upon using it, the in-game narrator briefly tells us that the tadpole is satisfied with it being used. Although it looks like it bugged a little bit, the effects used during this kind of look like we're utilizing psychic powers to facilitate the tadpole option. Since psionics are its own unique thing in D&D versus magic and everything else, it makes sense for this option to probably only scale with the usage of it, not necessarily any factors that we probably have any control over it. As far as the demo goes, I wonder if the tadpole option is, at the moment, probably just going to be giving us low dice checks to beat when it comes to persuasion options, at least in terms of out of combat usage. One of the things that I ended up picking out was there's a good example of stealth. Of course, we will have guaranteed crits when attacking sleeping enemies. Saving throws happen automatically in and out of combat. There will be a difference between long rest and short rest, just like in D&D, and nearby enemies will affect this as well. In the demo shown to us, we learned that we can gain camp followers. Our camp is going to be an important hub for character interaction. Not to mention, you just have to wonder what these choices will affect later down the road. Within the demo, we see that we can rescue a deep gnome, who Sven mentions could become a camp follower as well, and not to mention Volo. It looks like he's kinda held captive in the goblin camp, terrified and performing ballads for everyone. These things are optional though. If you want, you could choose to just outright leave them there and never come back. A part of our camp being important to us, this is also where certain events will take place. Think back to Shadows of Am. Whenever you slept, sometimes events with Aranicus would happen. You'd find yourself back in Candlekeep and whatnot. In this demo, the event we get to see is the devil called Raphael, tempting us to make a deal with him. He first shows up in human form, and I thought to myself, that's gotta be the devil we saw in the Gorilla Showcase. During our character interactions with him, he tells us that we're lucky that we haven't transformed yet. This made a light bulb go off in my head because ever since the second trailer, I just knew that it was strange that we didn't transform already. The process of ceramorphosis shouldn't take as long as it seemed to be in-game. I want to tie this to my theory about we the player becoming the messiah the Illithids might be trying to create. Through messing with the transformation process in general for Ceramorphosis, it is possible to make a different type of Illithid. The question is, what has been done to the tadpole used on us? What makes us so different? One little snippet that was kind of humorous was their technical difficulties image. It's just a screenshot of Volo with text that says, "Repairing a tear in the weave, be right back." As much as I would love for this to be some sort of foreshadowing for something in the plot or maybe a DLC or just something, that's probably not the case. Just like with the old games, there can be repercussions for looting something that isn't yours and will be marked in red as we're used to. As demonstrated by breaking down walls, damage types like bludgeoning and piercing will matter in-game, just like the old games. So if you come across a jelly, you might want to find a hammer to use. As Sven is trying to tempt the audience before making their decision in chat for the stream, he goes much deeper into the Goblin Camp, where we can see they have occupied an old temple of Saloon. Story-wise, there hasn't been any reason revealed as to why they're there yet. We are told that if chat chooses Goblins versus the Underdark, we would see a finale to the area with the hobgoblin called Dror Ragzlin, wanting to use Speak with Dead to get information out of a dead Illithid. We also learn that Dror is known as a warlord of the Absolute, as well as a true soul. But of course, as expected, chat voted for the Underdark. The beauty of having a dynamic environment is being able to do tricks like using slow fall and jumping into a giant hole. This, of course, is how Sven got us to the Underdark during the demo. Now here's also some quick vocab that was mentioned briefly or offhand during the demo, in case you didn't recognize what they were like I did. A creche, in reference to lae'zel's conversation at the beginning, is a place where her people train their young. I suspect she believes it's their best bet at the beginning of the game to removing the parasites from them. Gaik means Illithid in her people's language. At the moment, it looks like the Cult of the Absolute is new specifically to BG3. What we do know is that their leaders are called True Souls. They and their followers also have tadpoles in their heads and have forsaken their goblin deities to worship the one known as the Absolute, whom I'm thinking is most likely not a goblinoid of any kind. Before we knew who Raphael was, in my previous video, I made the mistake of calling him a demon, when he is in fact a devil. If you didn't know, or just get easily confused like I do, they are two different species within D&D. Devils are native to Hell, and demons are native to the Abyss. We find that Raphael is specifically a Cambion. The current meaning of that word is someone who is born of a mortal woman and a male devil. Here are some of the spells that were shown off during the demo. Now I'm going to show off some of the environments and lighting that we got to see during the demo. And lastly, here's some of the UI stuff we got to see. And that is everything that we learned from the Baldur's Gate 3 demo during the IGN Summer of Gaming livestream. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Let me know what you're looking forward to in the comments down below. In the meantime, I am active on Twitter. You can find me at McAllik_. And until then, see you next time. Stay safe out there.